Okay, before we go any further with the gameplay, now that we've got the basics into place, I want to take a few moments to basically upgrade the visuals a bit. Since we're in a 3D environment, we might as well take advantage of it. And this is a great example of how you could put placeholder graphics into place, get your proof of concept, and then take the time and effort to make the improved graphics. So first of all, you'll notice two things. This is called song play. All I did was save this scene. You just go up to File, Save Scene As, and I named it song play. Second of all is this. You'll see that it's just like the previous texture, except it doesn't have the strings. So what we're going to do is we're going to go into Materials, click on Guitar, and then we're going to replace the old one. I click on the little wheel right next to it with the new one. So we're replacing Guitar 2 with Guitar 3, and immediately you see it changes because we're changing the source texture, and the source texture is attached to the object. So why would we do that? Why would we get rid of the strings? Well, we get rid of the strings because we're going to add three-dimensional ones. So now that we removed the old texture, you can delete it, and it's actually strongly recommended once you've confirmed it's not anywhere else, because you really don't want the old resources hanging around. Particularly in larger games, it can really bog down the system, if nothing else, with unnecessary storage space. You're going to want to keep the source file, in your offline folders, but as part of the project itself, you really want to remove it as soon as you're certain you don't need it. Let's go up to Game Object, let's go to 3D Object, and let's go to Cylinder. Now we have to start changing this to make it much smaller. So let's see, 0.04, 0.04, and let's make this like 7. Now we already know that this is slanted at a 15-degree angle, excuse me. So that means this needs to be slanted at a 15-degree angle. So is it negative 15? Yeah, that looks right. And we already know what the center points of the orbs are, at least the horizontal center points. So let's go back into GM. So negative 134. So negative 134. Let's rename that first. String. And we'll copy and paste it. Slide it over. And where do we want that one to go? We want the second one to be 0.7, negative 0.7. Copy and paste that one. This is also a good example about how you shouldn't have to rethink the positions. We knew what the angle of the guitar arm was. We knew what the locations of the orbs are. So next one is negative 0.1. Positive 0.4, sorry. 1.95. And 1.45. Now, as far as vertically, that will have to play a little bit by ear. We'd have to... We know the center point of the orb, but we really don't know how, what the radius or diameter is, so this we'll have to eyeball. So I can tell you right now it's probably too high. Let's take a look. It instantiates at 1.24. Let's take a look. Okay. So first, forgot about this. We'll highlight the strings, and then we need to remove collider boxes. That's why they were bouncing around. Because by default, any 3D object, to the best of my knowledge, any 3D object has the collider boxes of some kind, collider capsule, whatever. Okay, so they are too high. So we'll just lower them as a group. And there we go. They're centered pretty good. Question is, do you want them to look like a line? Because right now they're kind of rectangular. Or do you want them to be a little more roundish? But now you've got like the shadows under them, so it's not just such a flat image. Speaking of that, that should be the Y, so let's flatten that out a little bit. There. Now the other thing is, I don't like the fact that the orbs just appear. In some rhythm games, the notes appear so fast that you really don't have a chance to notice, but ours are much slower, at least for now. So I'm going to put something up there to really block, to occlude the point in which they get instantiated. And I'm going to shrink this one more time. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to create a particle system. And I'm gonna go through this, but I'm gonna go through it really quick. So I do have other tutorials if you want to see a more thorough explanation of what each little thing does. So we're going to reduce the time, reduce the speed to almost nothing. Size stays the same. Let's make this like a bluish, like an aqua color. That's kind of pleasing. Let's increase the emission to like 150. Let's change the shape to a box. And let's make that box wider. Probably a little bit too wide. Okay, so it's lined up actually pretty good. Now we don't want the particles to just suddenly disappear off the edge or just appear into existence. We want them to kind of grow in and shrink out. So let's go to size of a lifetime, click on that, and the grid appears down here. Right click, choose add key, so they start smaller. Add another key at the end, so they stay the normal size for most of the term, and then when they disappear, they also shrink. So that way you don't have these really obvious pop in and out. Going to click on renderer. For sort mode, we want oldest in front. Move this up, and I think that's pretty close to what I want. Actually, I believe color over lifetime, so we'll also set this to an aqua. Not too worried about getting it exactly right. it actually gives it a more interesting effect when you're not choosing exactly the same color when you have these transitions. Actually, there's one more thing. I wanted to change the transparency to make it a little bit more like an aura. So it's not these kind of distinct individual particles, it's more kind of like a mist. Let's see how that works out. Well, for one thing, you slide it over, which also tells me it's not quite wide enough, so we can change this to 5. Because of that, probably going to have to boost up the particles a little bit, because now there's more space, so we need more particles to fill it. We want this to be pre-warmed so you don't see it slowly fill up. I think that was it. There we go. And so now, rather than having the orbs just kind of appear out of nowhere, at least you have this source. And this is entirely arbitrary. You don't have to do this. I just really like the idea of trying to kind of take advantage of the 3D environment. So this actually will not impact any of the future lessons. So if you don't want to do this, you don't have to. Because there really isn't any functional basis to this. This is purely visual. Alright, so since this is kind of an optional lesson, let's leave it like that for now. But it does give us the option, like for instance, when you hit the button, now that you have an actual object there and not a solid texture, maybe we can make the strings change color when you click on them, so it might lead to functionality later on, but if nothing else, it makes it a little bit more of a 3D, three-dimensional object now.